My name's Aiden. I live out in rural Vermont with my parents and two younger brothers. Life out here is quiet, mostly trees, long drives, and the occasional distant neighbor. One weekend, when my parents were away, my grandma offered to have us stay over at her place, just for the weekend. She lives on this big stretch of private land, kind of tucked away in its own little world. It's the closest thing to a vacation we'd get all summer. Fresh air, space to run around, and a little break from the usual routine. I'm the oldest, 15 at the time, old enough to think I could handle a weekend without supervision, but apparently not old enough for my parents to trust me to watch over my brothers on my own. So, Grandma's it. That first evening, just as the heat of the day started to fade and the crickets began their low, steady hum, my younger brother and I were outside shooting hoops on the cracked driveway. The sun had dipped just low enough that the trees cast long, slanted shadows across the pavement. It gave the yard a sort of hazy, golden glow. Eventually, we headed inside, the air cooler now, the sky dimming into purples and soft blues. We had dinner, nothing fancy, just something warm and filling, and afterward, I went up to my room. A little later, my grandma called up to me. Her voice echoed slightly up the narrow wooden staircase. "Aiden," she said, "you boys left the door open to the Morton building." At first, I didn't understand. "The what?" I asked, confused. "We didn't even go near the Morton building." Still, something in her voice made me come down. I walked to the dining room where she was standing, her eyes fixed on the window facing the back of the property. I followed her gaze and looked out. There it was, the Morton building, an old rectangular structure a ways back behind the house, its big steel door hanging slightly ajar. It was already dark by then. The trees beyond it formed a black wall, but there was a single yellow bulb glowing above the doorway, casting a wide, hazy circle of light. The door, unmistakably, was open, and I swear, even from that distance, it felt like something was watching from just beyond the edge of the light. The sight of that door hanging open didn't sit right with me. I called up to my two younger brothers from the bottom of the stairs, my voice sharp, cutting through the quiet of the house. "Hey, did either of you open the Morton building?" Both of them shouted back, nearly in unison, insisting they hadn't gone near it. I turned to my grandma, concern creeping into my tone. "Maybe someone broke in?" I said, trying to keep my voice level. That was all it took. As expected, she started spiraling. She always overreacts, but this time it didn't feel entirely unwarranted. I walked to the front door, the one with the small rectangle of glass at the top. I leaned forward to peer out, and that's when I screamed. "Holy shit!" My voice cracked loud and sudden through the house, making my own heart jump. My grandma practically ran into the foyer. What's wrong?" she cried, her voice already shaky. I took a half step back, my eyes still fixed through the glass. "There's a man. He's just standing there, right at the bottom of the front steps." Without hesitation, she pushed past me to see for herself. And when she did, when her eyes locked onto the dark silhouette just below our porch, she started shouting, panicked and shrill. "Call the police! Right now! Call them!" Adrenaline surged through me. My first instinct wasn't to call anyone. I wanted to go out there and confront him, figure out what the hell he was doing. But when I reached for the doorknob, she physically grabbed my arm and yanked it away. No, please, don't open that door," she pleaded, her voice cracking with desperation. Her eyes were wide, glossy. "Please, Aiden, don't go out there." She was trembling, clutching my wrist, tears starting to well up in her eyes. Every time I moved even slightly toward the knob, she tugged harder, begging. I finally gave in. "Okay," I muttered. "I'll call the cops." She was already on the phone, nearly breathless as she explained to the 911 operator what was happening. Her voice was breaking, trembling as she told them that someone was trying to break into our house. I sat in the dining room by the window, staring out into the darkness, trying to get a better look at the man. He hadn't moved, just stood there. The way the porch light hit him, only the edges of his figure were illuminated, like he was carved out of the night itself. Everything about him was shadow. The surrounding darkness was heavy, but somehow he was darker still. My grandma wouldn't let my brothers come downstairs, said she didn't want them seeing anything that would give them nightmares. But the truth was, I think she was afraid of what we all might see next. Then, suddenly, the man turned. He didn't run, he didn't speak. He just calmly walked past the dining room window I was seated beside, like he knew exactly where to go. We scrambled to follow him, moving room to room, peeking through every window we could as he passed by the house. The way he walked, it was too smooth, too sure, like he'd been here before. He drifted along the side of the house, disappearing toward the backyard, where the shadows between the trees swallowed him up. We raced to the den, where the large back-facing window gave us the widest view of the yard and the trees beyond. But when we got there, he was gone. Nowhere in sight. Just the dark tree line, the soft glow of the porch light behind us, and a silence so thick it made your ears feel heavy. When the police finally arrived, we didn't have much to tell them. "There was a man," we said. "He was standing on our porch. We think he might have come from the Morton building." They searched the building, inside and out, but nothing was out of place. No broken locks, no footprints they could track in the grass. Nothing. They did a sweep of the property, combed the area near the tree line, but came back empty-handed. "He's gone," they told us. But that didn't feel right, because something about the way he moved, so calmly, so deliberately, made it feel like he hadn't just left. It felt like he was still watching, somewhere, waiting. The police didn't stay long after their search. There just wasn't anything they could do. "If you see him again," one of them said, closing his notepad, "just call us back right away." And that was it. Realistically, they explained, unless the guy had broken in or caused harm, their hands were tied. My grandma, still shaken but trying her best to be strong, insisted that the three of us head upstairs for the night. She'd stay down in the living room, just in case. Said she'd feel better keeping watch. We didn't argue. Upstairs, in the guest room we always used during sleepovers at her place, my brothers and I set up the old GameCube we brought along. It felt weird, playing video games after everything, but the soft, familiar bleeps and bloops from the screen were comforting in a way. It helped us pretend, even just for a bit, that everything was normal. Sometime around 10 p.m., just as we were finishing another round of Mario Kart, a sound cut through the night that I will never forget. A scream. Not just a startled yelp, but a sharp, gut-deep scream of pure terror. It was my grandmother. We all froze. For half a second, it was like time stopped. Then all three of us sprang into action, bolting out of the room and thundering down the stairs, hearts pounding and breaths short. We found her in the den, shaking, pale, eyes wide and locked on the black void of the office doorway. She was pointing, her arm trembling violently. "He's in there," she whispered hoarsely. "There's someone in the office." The hallway lights didn't reach that far. The office was cloaked in thick, heavy darkness, so complete it looked like a hole had been cut in the wall. I didn't hesitate. I lunged forward and slammed the door shut. The sound echoed sharply through the quiet house. "Help me hold it," I barked at my brothers, my voice cracking from fear and urgency. We threw our weight against the door. It felt flimsy under our backs, like it might splinter with the slightest force. While we held it shut, my grandma shakily dialed 911 again, her voice high and rushed as she explained what had just happened. She kept repeating the same phrase over and over. "He's in the house. He's inside the house." The police arrived faster this time, and when they opened the office door, our hearts in our throats, they found him. There he was, lying calmly on the old, faded couch in the corner of my grandma's office. Not hiding, not resisting, just lying there, like he belonged. His expression was blank, almost casual. When questioned, he didn't even try to deny anything. He told the officers he had come in through the den window. It hadn't been locked. He said the house felt warm and safe, and he figured he'd just spend the night there. That office had only one way in or out, the very door we had been bracing ourselves against. The 2 windows in there were old and sealed tight. No chance of slipping away once he was inside. He had no weapon, no bags, no explanation that made any sense. Just a quiet, matter-of-fact tone as he answered every question. My grandma is 92 now. She's always been nervous, easily startled, overly cautious about everything. It used to be kind of endearing, even funny at times. But after that night, she double-checks every window now, locks the doors 3 times before bed. She keeps a light on in every room and flinches at the smallest creak. Something about the way that man got inside, the way he walked among us unnoticed, how calm he was. It shattered whatever fragile sense of safety she had left. And honestly, I don't blame her. Because even now, years later, I sometimes think back to that moment, the way the darkness spilled out of the office doorway like a living thing. The sound of her scream still rings in my ears. And I wonder, how long had he been in there before she noticed? I was 14 at the time, vacationing in the Bahamas with some family friends. It was meant to be a relaxing getaway, sun, beaches, and a break from the usual routine. One afternoon, my friend and I decided to get henna tattoos from a small setup near the hotel lobby. It was bright out, humid but breezy, and the area buzzed with casual vacation energy. While we sat getting our tattoos, I noticed this man hovering nearby. He wasn't exactly staring, but he lingered longer than anyone else, just loitering, watching. At first, I didn't think much of it. People often pause to watch the henna artist's work, curious tourists admiring the designs. It didn't seem out of place, not really. Once mine was finished, I told my friend and her mom that I'd head back to our room to get ready for dinner. It was still early, and the plan was to meet up later. I felt safe. We were in a resort. Nothing bad happens at a resort, right? There were 2 routes I could take to the other side of the hotel. One path led outdoors along the edge of the pool area, lively with people. The other was an indoor hallway that passed through a stretch of small shops and boutiques. It was cooler inside, so I chose that way. The hall was quiet, softly lit, lined with shuttered storefronts and display windows. My sandals echoed on the tile floor. When I reached the elevator, my breath caught slightly. The man from earlier was already there, standing silently in front of the closed doors. He turned and looked at me, not smiling, just acknowledging my presence. I hesitated but forced a polite nod and stood beside him. The elevator doors opened with a mechanical ding, and we stepped in together. It was just the two of us. He didn't press a floor button right away. Instead, he made a vague gesture toward the panel and said, "Go ahead, you first." I pressed the button for my floor. He just stood there, didn't move, didn't press anything. A quiet, heavy unease settled in my chest. I stared at the closed doors, watching the floor numbers slowly tick up. My brain started screaming, "This feels wrong." But what could I do? I was alone with him in a metal box between floors. When we stopped, the doors slid open to reveal the empty hallway. I stepped out quickly, hoping he wasn't actually following me. But the second I heard his footsteps behind me, that dull fear hardened into panic. The hallway was long and narrow, lined with ocean-facing rooms. To the right were nothing but wide windows, darkening now with the early evening sky reflecting the waves below. On the left, room after room, all closed, all silent. My room was the very last one on the floor. As I walked, I could hear him behind me, steady, unhurried, keeping just enough distance to not raise alarm, but not far enough to feel coincidental. 10 feet behind, 8, 6. Then, without warning, he rushed forward. In a blur, I felt his hand grab me, sharp and sudden. My whole body went cold. I screamed, kicked wildly. I don't even remember what I said, just that I yelled something, anything. The man stumbled, maybe startled, maybe losing his grip, and hit the floor with a thud. I didn't wait to see what he'd do next. I sprinted the last few feet to my door, fumbled the keycard, slammed it in, and burst inside. I locked it, deadbolt, chain, every lock I could engage, I did. I backed away from the door, shaking, heart punching at my ribs. Security was called immediately. I gave them the clearest description I could, still trying to catch my breath. A few officers arrived not long after, calm but clearly concerned. Turns out, this man hadn't just followed me. He'd been seen watching several young women around the hotel, quietly, repeatedly. They found him, caught him. And it still makes my skin crawl to think that if I had taken the pool path, or hesitated for even a second longer, that night might have ended very differently. It was just a few weeks ago when my wife Allison and I decided to take a little trip to a remote mountaintop resort a few hours from home. We needed a break, something quiet, away from the noise of daily life. The place was family-run, tucked up in the high country, and out of respect for them, I won't be sharing the name. This particular weekend was a couples retreat, which meant the usual family-friendly amenities had been swapped out for something a bit more adult-oriented, more romantic, more private. The schedule was filled with wine tastings, fireside chats, and other couple-focused activities. The entire place had a kind of old-timey charm to it, almost rustic. Everything was wood, the floors, the walls, the ceilings. The scent of pine and polished timber lingered in the air, and the furniture all had that quaint, hand-carved look you only really see in mountain lodges. It felt warm, peaceful, honest. Our room was enormous, clearly meant to be 2 separate rooms at one point, with a door in between that had been left open to create a suite. It felt almost too big for just the 2 of us, but we weren't complaining. That first evening, the resort hosted a rather odd event, a singles mingle night held in the basement club just below the dining hall. It felt out of place considering this was a couples weekend, but we figured it might be fun anyway. We didn't mingle with the singles though. Instead, we passed the time playing a bit of late-night shuffleboard, chatting casually with a few other couples we met, and sipping drinks from the cozy little bar. The lights were low, and an amateur guitarist was on stage playing mellow acoustic covers. Nothing impressive, but pleasant enough. It was nearing 12:30 when we finally made our way back to our room. The moment we stepped inside, a foul stench hit us. It hadn't been there earlier. It was sharp and heavy, like something organic had gone bad. There was a distinct skunky undertone to it, something musty and sour that curled in the back of your throat. Allison wrinkled her nose and smacked my chest lightly, half joking. "Seriously? Did you sneak off and smoke pot or something?" I gave her a tired look. Come on, I haven't touched that stuff since college. Still, the smell was undeniable. It wasn't faint either. It was hanging in the air like a thick, invisible fog. Allison, always the practical one, headed straight to the front desk in the main building to ask if we could switch rooms. She came back looking frustrated. Apparently, they turned down her request. Most of the rooms were already booked up for the weekend, but they did send someone from the staff up to our room to check things out. He stepped in, took one whiff, and his face twisted. "Yeah, that's not right," he admitted. The source of the smell seemed to be coming from the adjoining room, the extra space we hadn't even used. The staff member said it was possible a skunk had gotten in through a vent or crawl space. He gave us a partial discount for the inconvenience, then pulled a can of spray freshener from the closet and misted it around the room. The floral scent tried to smother the stench, but it didn't quite succeed. It just made everything smell like potpourri and roadkill. Before he left, he suggested we keep the door between the two rooms shut for the night. "Might help," he said with a shrug. "If it's just a lingering smell, it'll fade. If not, well, skunks don't usually hang around long." That didn't exactly reassure us. Still, it was late. We were tired, so we did what we could. Closed the door between the rooms, opened the window slightly, and crawled into bed. We tried to sleep, but something about that smell, the way it clung to the air, it made my skin crawl in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't just unpleasant, it felt wrong, like something was still in there with us. It was only a few minutes after we turned out the lights that we started hearing it. A sound, soft but steady. Thud, thud, thud. It came from the left side of the bed, from the other room. Allison stiffened beside me, her hand instinctively finding mine under the covers. We both stayed silent at first, listening. The sound continued, slow, rhythmic, like something tapping or bumping softly against the wall or the floor. Thud, thud. We tried to ignore it. Maybe it was the building settling or the wind. Old places like this made noises sometimes, especially out in the mountains. I closed my eyes and focused on breathing. But it didn't stop. If anything, it got more deliberate. I sat up. "It's probably a raccoon or something," I muttered, trying to keep my voice calm. "Rodent found its way in through a vent." Still, I grabbed the broom from the corner. It was the closest thing to a weapon we had. The handle felt too light in my hand, but I gripped it tightly anyway. I moved slowly, walking toward the connecting door between the rooms. The doorknob felt cold as I turned it. The room was dimly lit from the window we'd left slightly open. Moonlight spilled across the wooden floor in pale slashes, and the air was still tinged with that sour, skunky smell. The moment I stepped in, the noise stopped. Total silence. I swept the broom out in front of me, half expecting something to scurry across the floor. I knelt down and checked under the bed. Nothing. Opened the closet. Empty. Whatever had been making the noise was gone. A chill ran down my arms, but I told myself it was just nerves. I was already halfway back to the door when something caught my attention. Something wrong. I didn't turn my head at first, just froze. Out of the corner of my eye, in the far left corner of the room, there was something standing there. Not furniture, not a shadow. Something tall, unnaturally tall, and still. The outline was faint in the moonlight, just barely distinguishable from the shadows around it. I couldn't see its face, or if it even had one, but it was there, looming, watching. I didn't move a muscle, didn't speak. My body screamed at me to run. I didn't look at it directly. I just turned slowly, reached for the door, stepped out, and quietly closed it behind me. I locked the connecting door. Then I grabbed the phone and called the front desk again, my voice low but shaking. This time, they didn't waste time. Within minutes, the owner of the resort showed up himself, armed with a gun. He was older, gruff, and clearly alarmed. "You sure about what you saw?" he asked. I nodded, still pale. It wasn't an animal. He moved through the hallway and opened the door to the second room from the opposite side. And that's when we saw it. The door to the hallway, the one on the far side of the second room, was wide open. Whoever I saw in that corner, they had slipped out, quietly, quickly, the moment I turned my back. The owner looked at us, jaw tight. "You were right to call," he said. "You really were." Then he added something that made my stomach twist. "There've been some creeps coming around lately, locals maybe. They sneak into the resort at night, stealing food from the cafeteria, breaking into rooms while people are sleeping. We've been trying to catch them, but they come and go real quiet. No one's seen them up close." Allison turned pale. My skin felt cold. The figure I'd seen, it had been a person, watching from the shadows, silent, patient, waiting. And if I hadn't turned when I did, would they have stayed longer?